Homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. Profound and subtle dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate all sentient beings, please generate unsurpassed bodhicitta. Now I will explain the principle that all phenomena are originally pure in the relative truth. We previously examined this from the perspectives of both the object and the subject. We have already covered the purity of the object. Now let's discuss the subject as wisdom. Regarding the subject as wisdom, as we discussed before, through investigation or actual practice, you will eventually realize this truth. The mind of all sentient beings, although it appears to be confused, mistaken, and far from enlightened on a surface level, it is actually pure in its true nature. In reality, it is indeed pure. You often come across similar terms, even in the Sutrayana. For instance, we say that sentient beings are originally Buddhas and that afflictions are originally pure wisdom, or that self-attachment is originally the pure wisdom of selflessness. There are many expressions like these. However, to many people, these statements sound a bit contradictory. You might wonder, how can sentient beings be Buddhas? How is that possible? Since sentient beings have afflictive and cognitive obscurations, while the Buddha has already abandoned them, how can they be the same? Isn't there a conflict here? Many of you might have this doubt. Actually, you must understand this point through the process of hearing and contemplation. Therefore, I truly hope that you can use the wisdom of hearing and contemplation to determine the hidden intent of the Buddha's teachings. The other day, we held a debate on Buddhist logic regarding establishing the Buddha as the valid authority. It was also broadcast live online. Many leaders and scholars in various places had no idea what the Dharma was before, but after listening, they found it very interesting. Even though they didn't know what the term valid authority meant, they couldn't even find it in a dictionary. What does it mean to say Buddha Shakyamuni is a valid authority? Gradually, through other approaches, they came to understand it. In the end, I heard that many of them have already taken refuge. They realized that Buddhism is not just about burning incense and bowing to Buddha statues as they once thought. I often say that there are two kinds of Buddhism. One type exists in both the Tibetan region and the Han region. It's the kind of faith held by some elderly people which carries a bit of superstition. Of course, there is no superstition in Buddhism itself, but some of their behaviors do involve superstitious elements. Because of this, many young people assume that being a Buddhist simply means believing in bowing and burning incense. They think there is no profound logic beyond that, or any ultimate philosophical teachings. They all think this way. But now many young people are gaining a real understanding of the Dharma. I believe that in this 21st century era, especially within Chinese Han Buddhism, we are witnessing a period of great prosperity. I wouldn't call it just a beginning, but it is a very active time in our history. You can see this clearly from history. So it is truly important for you young people to engage in hearing and contemplation to gain the wisdom that comes from deep reflection on the true teachings. This is vital because our lives are so short. There are many pursuits you can choose in life, but only a few bring true meaning to both this life and your future lives. Some things benefit not just yourself, but all other sentient beings. I believe that actions which bring happiness to yourself and well-being to countless sentient beings are more important than anything else. There are so many paths you could take in this world. Sometimes I think for those of you sitting here today, among the countless professions available in this world, it's really fortunate that you have chosen the work of studying the Dharma. So as you study, please try not to let the teachings remain as mere words on the page. You must internalize these truths, especially the most essential points. You really need to remember these essential points. If you do, your faith will never waver. First, you yourself will stay firm on the path. And when you are deeply moved by these truths, you will naturally begin to live them out in your daily life. Your own light will then go on to shine for others. So I hope that none of you here, especially some of our practitioners, will lose heart. It hasn't been too cold in Larangad this year, but it will definitely get much colder soon. When it gets cold, I see many people, not just those from the Han region, but even the Tibetan lamas and jomos here at the academy, struggling with the freezing weather. Whenever they get the chance and the conditions are right, they start thinking about going somewhere warmer to enjoy the sun or the ocean, and they have all sorts of ideas like that. But for a true ascetic and practitioner, living in tougher conditions can actually be better for you. When everything is comfortable and all your needs are met, it's easy to become arrogant, greedy, or fall into wrong ways of thinking. But if you are in a simple, ascetic environment and have unique faith in the three jewels, then the wisdom you gain will be very pure. So I hope that while you are here studying, you make the most of your time and don't waste it. I'm not sure if I mentioned this recently, but I met a fellow practitioner while I was traveling. He is now an abbot at a monastery and is doing quite well. But when he saw me, he couldn't stop crying. I asked him why. He told me he had stayed at Laranga for 5 or 6 years, but back then he was very young and quite naughty. I remember criticizing him many times back then. He didn't seem to remember the teachings I gave him, but he remembered those scoldings clearly. Why was he crying now? Because he had spent so much time at Larunga, 5 or 6 years. Normally, anyone else would have received many profound teachings, but he felt he had learned nothing. He said, I was just too young and restless back then. I learned nothing, and you were always so strict with me. I felt it was unfair then and struggled with so many negative thoughts about you. But now that I'm out here, even though I know a bit more than others, but in truth, I haven't gained profound or lasting certainty. So he was full of regret and longed for those old days at Larunga. I told him, you're actually doing quite well because you have this sincere heart. That is the first point. Second, I'm glad to see that you are still a monk. Even after so many years away from the academy, it is truly good that you are still living as a monk in the monastery. But what he said really came from the heart. Some of our Dharma friends, even though they are here to study, are like those college students who just drift through their 4 years without truly learning. As the saying goes, they aren't attending college, they are just coasting through it. By the time they graduate, they haven't learned anything useful. Instead, they've picked up many bad habits. This happens in the world too. So whether you are in the Buddhist Association or here at Larungar, you must cherish your time. When you have such wonderful conditions and opportunities every day, remember that many people don't have this luxury. This time is more precious than gold. But some people don't realize this and spend their days with the wrong crowd, even though this is a pure place of practice. Sometimes I feel some practitioners aren't even as diligent as little sparrows. Those sparrows get up so early, they are incredibly hardworking. There are a few by my window and they are so very diligent. Usually they don't return to their nests until long after dark. It's not easy. Even before the sun comes up in the morning, they chirp for a long time as if they're chanting prayers. As soon as it's light, they immediately head out to find food. When the sun just starts to rise, they might be in the trees, perhaps bathing or something. They are always busy grooming themselves and fixing their feathers. So I wonder if our Dharma friends can be as diligent in their practice. Well, I won't talk more about that. All right, let's continue. In this respect, confused appearances are not true, while pure appearances are true because they are faultless. As we discussed earlier, everything that appears to ordinary people is a confused appearance. It isn't real, just like seeing a white conch shell as yellow. Pure appearances are actually free from all taints. They are the true original nature. When we realize the middle way, we see the true nature of the Tathagata. Within this primordial nature, relative phenomena do not exist at all. This is often called other empty madhyamaka. However, the nature of Tathagata itself is not something that is permanently non-empty, like the permanent self asserted by non-Buddhists. It's not like that. Its essence is also empty, therefore it can be called self-empty madhyamaka. So, in principle, there is no contradiction between self-empty and other empty. They are simply explained from different levels of method and understanding. Now, the text says, for example, when varieties of gold originating from earth and iron, or the water gold of Jambudvipa, are mixed with mercury that originates from water, herbs, and coal, it comes to look like a single substantial mass that resembles a lump of fresh butter. Even though these various component parts may not be apparent to the sense organs, such as the eyes. For example, many types of ores look like this when they are first dug out, resembling liquid mercury or a fresh ball of butter. In fact, they are a mixture of earth, stone, gold, silver, iron, water, and various minerals, all combined into one single mass. On the surface, it appears as a white butter-like lump. Perhaps due to a high mercury content, it appears as a white object. Many ores are like this at the very beginning. They might look like white crystal, or as we said, a ball of butter. At this stage, its true essence is not mercury, iron, or stone, or anything else. Its true nature is pure gold. Just as when refining gold today, this is the very source from which gold is extracted from various minerals. The mind can still know that this is composed of various elements. We cannot see this with our physical eyes, but an expert or a wise person in this field knows as soon as it's dug up, oh, this is actually a substance made of many different components. They know that once refined, it will become a piece of gold. It is perfectly clear to our consciousness and our wisdom but our eyes cannot see it. To the eye, it looks like a white crystal ball or something similar. Confused individuals will think the lump is butter, fat, or something similar. Confused people, or those who aren't experts, have no idea that it's actually pure gold ore. Such a person just sees it as a lump of butter or a crystal ball, just some white object. It's the same for people in the world. Regarding all phenomena, everything is originally pure, but right now, when it appears before us, we cannot see its true original nature. Some will consider that when in contact with fire, this could be the cause for producing gold. When some people see that substance, the one that looks like a crystal ball, and realize that it can turn into gold if it is heated with fire, they look at that white lump and consider it to be the cause of gold. That's how they see it. It's the same with how we view sentient beings. For instance, if I have studied the sutras, I see that many people can eventually become Buddhas through practicing the path. Therefore, we call every sentient being a Buddha, in the sense that they are the very cause of a Buddha. In the causal vehicle, sentient beings are viewed as the seed or the cause for becoming a Buddha. But in Vajrayana, we say directly that their very nature is already the Buddha. While alchemists might see it as a conglomeration of substances with the potential to change into various things depending on the external conditions that it meets. An expert doesn't just see it as a cause of gold. They recognize that it is currently made up of many different elements. There's water, coal, and all sorts of things in there. They know that depending on the external conditions it meets, it will manifest differently based on those substances. Under cold conditions, the lump can endure indefinitely, similar to a lump of butter. If this mineral isn't heated and doesn't undergo a chemical reaction, it could sit there for millions of years or countless eons and stay exactly as it is forever. It's the same for sentient beings. Their mind stream is like pure gold. The true face of Tathagata Garbha could appear if they met the Dharma. But without meeting a spiritual teacher or the right conditions of the Buddha's teachings, they just keep wandering in samsara as ordinary beings. One remains just like that white, raw lump, never revealing its inherent essence of pure original gold. When in contact with heat, it will turn the color of copper, bronze, or brass. This describes the process of refining the ore. In modern factories, when they process minerals, it used to require long periods of high heat and repeated refining. Nowadays, I hear they use chemical reactions to extract the gold. Once it's refined, the highest purity is 99.99%. So you have 24K, 18K, 12K, and so on. The other day, a Dharma teacher was giving a lecture and said nowadays so many people wear gold earrings and jewelry, acting like they are golden bodhisattvas. But in reality, those aren't even real gold. They are just covered in fake gold powder. Why use fake powder to decorate a human life that is as precious as a wish-fulfilling jewel? He was joking with the local people. But in this world, since ancient times, everyone has been very fond of gold. The value of gold generally remains stable. That's why using gold as a metaphor to explain Tathagata Garbha is such an excellent analogy. Actually, this analogy was first explained in the Vajrayana treatises of Rongzom Pandita. Later, omniscient Longchenpa also cited this metaphor in his commentary on the Guhyagarbha Tantra. And now that omniscient Mipham Rinpoche has included it, all of us here should make an effort to master this principle. In today's world, you might go to India, Sri Lanka, or Thailand to study meditation or different Dharma methods. People pay a high price wherever they hear there is a lineage, often spending a lot of money to seek the truth. But whether they actually find it in the end, that's hard to say. So for all of you here, when you seek the secret mantra, if you can at least master this most fundamental point, then the most vital issues of both Sutra and Tantra will be resolved for you. This will provide you with a foundation for life where you won't easily fall into wrong views or doubts. Once you understand, your practice will have much more power. If we are constantly fighting off doubts and wrong thoughts, then while in that state of mind, your chanting, mantras, and visualization might not be as effective. It's just like what is taught in the beacon of certainty. Until you have a firm, stable certainty, your study and practice will be stuck in a state of constant gain and loss. In such a mindset, whatever you do simply won't be very effective. Why is it that many past masters reach such high levels of realization in such a short time? On one hand, it was their karmic connection from past lives, but on the other, it had everything to do with their faith and wisdom. I remember when I first learned this metaphor, it really helped me understand many principles. The sutras don't go into this much detail at all. Although it often says all sentient beings possess the Buddha nature, it's usually just a brief mention. While the Avatamsaka and Lotus Sutras have some metaphors, but nothing points out your true nature as directly and clearly as this. So the text describes this gradual process. Likewise, when baked in fire, it will resemble ordinary gold. During that refining process, if the fire is intense enough, it turns into ordinary gold. In terms of Dharma practice, once you reach the bhumis, the golden nature has basically appeared. However, at that stage, it hasn't been completely purified yet. When thoroughly fired, it will turn as golden as the water gold of Jambudvipa. At that point, it will be immutable regardless of exposure to heat or cold. At that point, it's like someone who has already attained the wisdom of a Buddha. Comparing the Buddha's wisdom to refined gold is truly a perfect analogy. Right now, we are like a piece of ore that has just been dug out of a mine. Our inner nature is gold, but on the outside, we look like a common rock or a lump of butter. That's our current state. Now, some people will look at this and say it's gold. Others might say it's a mercury pill or even just a piece of iron. In a way, everyone's perspective has its own logic based on what they see. But the truth is, it is gold. That is its true nature. When it is finely refined under the highest temperatures, bit by bit, the iron parts melt away and disappear, and the copper parts are gone too. Of course, things like earth and water would have dried up and vanished long before that. What finally emerges is genuine gold. Once the gold has been fully refined, will it ever turn back into a lump of dirt? According to chemists, that doesn't happen. I've actually spoken with chemists at universities about this. I specifically asked them, can gold ever turn back into that mixture of raw ore? They told me it's absolutely impossible. Now, if you have ordinary gold that hasn't been fully refined, it might tarnish or show some rust over time. But once gold reaches its most pure state, it will never revert to its original raw condition. Some people wonder, once a Buddha attains enlightenment, could they ever become an ordinary person again or have delusions? There's no need to worry about that. Just as refined gold will never turn back into a stone, enlightenment is irreversible. This analogy is very important for us to understand. With this in mind, when we say that sentient beings are already Buddhas, we must realize there are different ways to refine that nature. For example, I hear there are some modern chemical reactions that are incredibly fast. Pure gold is extracted in almost no time at all. This is like the pith instructions in Zen or Vajrayana that point directly to the nature of the mind. Other methods require processing the material layer by layer over a very long time. That was the case in ancient times, and it's still true for some processes today. That is like practicing the path step by step. This is how the essence of the Tathagatagarbha truly reveals itself. Everyone should keep this analogy in mind. The alaya consciousness that possesses all the propensities that give rise to appearances can be understood in a similar way. Just as the lump appears in various ways based on the contributing circumstance of the fields of experience of the senses, just as mercury takes on various forms depending on its surroundings, the inherent alaya within every sentient being also manifests in various ways at different stages. On different occasions, the alaya gives rise to pure, impure, and extremely pure appearances concerning the environment, forms, and the domain of experience. This includes impure ordinary beings with delusions, pure bodhisattvas, and the perfectly pure Buddhas. All phenomena appear differently depending on the environment, the form, and the domain of experience. To those who are completely impure, it's like seeing the raw mixture. They can't see the gold at all. Those who are somewhat pure perceive it as having the nature of ordinary gold. But to the perfectly pure ones, the true reality of all things is revealed, just like seeing pure gold. Just as it is possible to know that the lump is composed of a conglomeration of elements, whether the karmic propensities within the alaya are actually evident or not. Just as the lump might directly show its goldness or hide it, the same is true for the alaya. It can be known through the mind that the alaya possesses all the seeds for the limitless phenomena that reach throughout time and space. This means that within the inherent power of the alaya, some appearances are apparent, while others are subtle or hidden. However, our consciousness and wisdom can comprehend this. In truth, the alaya has the potential to manifest infinite forms. It can manifest as pure or impure. Think back to that ore. If it's processed, it can manifest entirely as pure gold. If not, and if it's left under different conditions, it might look like copper or just a plain rock. Sometimes it looks like a lump of butter, appearing differently to different people. Regarding the alaya in our world, omniscient Longchen discusses this in the Seven Treasuries, and there are detailed explanations in the Chariot of the Great Vehicle. There are many levels of understanding, such as the ripening alaya and the seed alaya. In a broad sense, the mountains, rivers, and the entire earth are all manifestations of the alaya. In this context, everyone's perception and evaluation of the world, and all phenomena will vary. Even when looking at the same thing, some will see it as rectangular while others see it as round. It is one single object, yet some find it wonderful while others find it terrible. Different people perceive the same object in different ways. This is due to the power of our habitual tendencies and the functions of the alaya. You should all be able to understand this point. In the same way that the lump can be mistaken for butter, there are those who apprehend the appearances of the all-encompassing alaya as that of the self and phenomena. Non-Buddhists and people of the world are just like people who look at that mercury pill and have no idea there's gold inside. They cling to the manifestations of the alaya as real external self and phenomena, believing them to be permanent. Especially for those who haven't studied Buddhism, they don't even know these are phenomena. Similarly, if someone knows nothing about minerals and finds a piece of unrefined gold ore on the road, they wouldn't even think of it as a mercury pill. They just see a rock, having no idea what it actually is. This is like non-Buddhists or people in the world who have never studied the correct logic of reality. They have no concept of emptiness regarding what they call the self. That's just how it is. Just as the lump can be identified as mercury, for some the five aggregates are held to be the phenomena of suffering, the nature of fully ripened karma. Take those who follow the Shravaka path, for instance. They are like the people who look at the ore and only see mercury. They view these five aggregates simply as the painful ripening of past karma. Their perspective is summed up as life is suffering. My book, Tales for Transforming Adversity, explains the truth of suffering and the truth of origin, while Achieved by Doing explains the truth of cessation and the truth of the path. Do you get it? So I have to do a bit of promotion here, right? Analogous to apprehending the lump as the source of gold, there are those who seize upon the heap of aggregates as a suitable cause for achieving the perfectly pure body and field of experience of those who abide in the pure lands. In this view, the gold has started to emerge. Some higher Sutrayana views are like this. In mind-only or Madhyamaka, the five aggregates are often described as the cause for those dwelling in pure lands, as taught in the ornament of clear realization. They are seen as the seeds for pure enjoyment and a pure body. They identify the five aggregates as the cause that allows one to be reborn in a pure land in the future. For alchemists, especially those wise masters who hold the pith instructions of Vajrayana, the lump may not appear as pure gold, yet they know it is not other than gold. Although it may look like mercury, it does not transform into mercury. Nonetheless, it is not the case that there is no mercury at all, because mercury is said to be volatile by nature, easy to change, and capable of eventual disintegration. This is the general Vajrayana view. In Vajrayana, our body and afflictions, all these distorted, temporary, and illusory appearances, are clearly seen as being like a mercury pill on the surface. Though this pill looks solid and clear, its nature is unstable and deceptive. For those with these pith instructions, all the impurities we see in the world may indeed appear as real as mercury before our eyes, yet they are unstable, deceptive, and not ultimate. Through continuous practice, it's like heating that mercury over and over. Very quickly, the substance of the mercury vanishes, and the true nature of the gold appears. It was this same thing all along. It's not as if the gold fell from the sky or suddenly popped out of the ground. It's the very thing we've been holding. Before, we just thought it was mercury. But after the refining of long-term practice, the mercury fades away until it's gone. It's exactly the same principle. The mountains, the rivers, and all these impure appearances, while they look this way to an ordinary person, in the end they will all fade, dissolve, and cease to exist. Conversely, the nature of gold is far more stable, resists change, and does not degrade. Even in contact with raging fire, gold will not disintegrate. Once the real gold appears, as I mentioned, it won't revert or change back. Its nature is set forever. So as we practice, eventually the nature of the Tathagata Garbha, the true nature of all phenomena, is revealed. That essence is permanent and will never regress. Likewise, as conditioned phenomena, all impure appearances are unstable and extremely deceptive. Nevertheless, the easy-to-change appearances of past and future lives can be exhausted by practicing on the path. We constantly see all kinds of these impure appearances in our lives, but they are actually unstable and deceptive. What we see now is definitely an illusion. It isn't the true nature. Furthermore, our past and future lives are also prone to change. For instance, in this life as a human, water can quench my thirst. But if I am reborn in the next life as a hungry ghost or a hell being, the way I perceive water will change instantly. When I was reborn as an animal, I could eat grass. But as a human, I can't eat common grass, except maybe some cabbage. So these karmic perceptions shift very easily. Our experiences of the outside world change constantly, along with our karma and our physical forms. As a human, I might be deeply attached to gold or houses, but in my next life, if I'm a yak, I won't care about gold. I'll have no attachment to it. As for houses, so many people today love buying luxury villas. But if I'm a pig or a chicken in the next life, then even if there's a multi-million-dollar villa, I won't want it, won't know how to use it, and won't feel the slightest bit of attachment to it, right? Human karmic perception is incredibly fleeting. The appearances of the six realms are truly unstable. Only the pure appearances seen by the noble ones will never fade or be exhausted. They can only be changed through the path. Since pure appearances are in opposition to impure ones, once a pure body and pure field of experience have been mastered, that which was once impure will never reoccur. All those pure appearances are in opposition to the impure ones I just described. Once you truly master that pure body, like an eighth level bodhisattva, meditative absorption and post-meditation become inseparable. At that point, you can never regress. Intense afflictions will never arise in your mind stream again. It will never become impure. Moreover, when exceedingly pure supreme exaltation free from suffering is generated, as a result, pure appearances become stable and undeceiving. The wisdom of great bliss, the state of purity and liberation within the mind stream of these bodhisattvas, is always stable. It is impossible for them to ever regress. We see this among many noble beings and even among dedicated practitioners. For some practitioners, once their realization has become stable, it doesn't just last for this lifetime. No matter what kind of being they are born as in the next life, they will not lose that realization. I was recently translating the biography of a holy being who could recall many of his past lives. Whether these were intentional manifestations or actual karmic shifts, he often transitioned through many lives, sometimes as an animal and sometimes as a human. Yet throughout all those lifetimes, his original virtuous heart never changed. Even when he was born as an animal, he would still feel compassion for the beings around him and help them constantly. This kind of goodness is truly resilient and does not waver. This relates to our discussion on establishing Buddha Shakyamuni as to valid authority. The mind holds many states, affliction, suffering, and also great compassion. But great compassion is like the gold in our earlier analogy. The commentary on valid cognition also uses the same analogy, and you should all remember it. Sentient beings truly possess the essence of the Tathagata Garbha in the realm of relative truth. Great compassion is immeasurable, and its power can expand infinitely. The capacity and potential of this mind are beyond what modern science can currently measure, so we must understand. Once you finally reach that state of purity, it is extremely stable. For example, even if you were a bad person earlier in life, if you meet a spiritual teacher who transforms you, you can develop a stable realization, faith, and wisdom. That won't change even at the moment of death. And in the next life, no matter who you become, that foundation remains. I often think about those of you who have been studying the Dharma here for many years, those who have been here for a decade or two. You have built such a solid foundation that it will remain unchanged throughout all your future lives. Now, some people are very intense when they first start. I've met many Buddhists recently, both in universities and here at Larongar, whose faith is incredibly strong and wisdom is very sharp. But it is uncertain whether they can persist in their studies long term. Without long-term study, a fleeting moment of wisdom may not be enough to counter deep-seated afflictions. That's why you need to have a long-term mindset in your practice. With persistent practice, you will finally recognize your own true nature. Once this nature is realized, it becomes irreversible. Therefore, it remains stable and undeceiving. Consequently, if the lump composed of a variety of elements is carefully observed, its intrinsic nature as gold becomes self-evident. As we said, that lump has all sorts of elements. Ultimately, of course, everything is empty. We won't go into that now. But in terms of relative truth, it's absolute undeniable truth. Nature is gold. It isn't mercury, copper, or stone. Some people today think that the essence of sentient beings is just a stone rather than gold. But that doesn't even hold up logically in conventional terms. Similarly, the alaya too, that possesses a variety of factors and appearances, becomes self-evident as the domain of pure appearances. In other words, when the true nature of the alaya is revealed, it is exactly like that pure gold. Genuine wisdom and boundless compassion are its true nature. This is an absolute fact, just like pure gold. So for every one of you sitting here, no matter what you look like, no matter what your afflictions are, or how bad your current situation seems. It's just that there are more impurities mixed into your pure gold lump right now. Having many afflictions just means there is a bit more stone mixed in with your gold. Yet in truth, it is still a lump of gold, not a lump of stone. You might feel, I'm so terrible, my afflictions are too heavy, I'll never make it. But no matter how heavy those afflictions are, the essence of the Tathagata Garbha is there. It is just that the conditions aren't ripe yet, or you are hitting some obstacles in your refining process. Perhaps the workers at the refinery simply didn't show up for work. But once the conditions are met, the pure gold will surely be revealed. The original nature of every person's Buddha nature is exactly like this. This is an absolute truth. Once all habits of temporary confusion are exhausted, it seems certain that appearances generated by that confusion will cease to arise. All those impure appearances will be gone completely, because it is impossible to make a separation from the nature itself in the radiance of the space. Of the original ground, unimpeded, spontaneously present appearances are irreversible. This is the aspect of wisdom we often discuss, the unceasing nature of appearances. It's the luminous aspect of the Tathagata Garbha. Even when all the impurities on the pure gold have been completely removed, it doesn't mean that nothing is left. At that time, the ever-present and natural wisdom, the spontaneously present luminosity of the Tathagata Garbha will never vanish. It remains even when you reach Buddhahood. But it is hard for ordinary people to imagine this state, and it is even harder to describe. We simply cannot put it into words right now. As we often say, the Four Noble Truths. Before Buddhahood, the truth of cessation and the truth of the path are seen as separate. You use the path to reach cessation. The path aims at cessation. You could say they are distinct. But once you reach the level of an eighth Bhumi Bodhisattva or higher, the path and cessation become completely one. Think of a spark and a piece of wood. Initially, they are separate until conditions make them burn. But once they become a blazing fire, the wood and the spark are no longer separate. They have merged into one. This is because it is impossible to separate the nature from its own radiance. Similarly, since wisdom's self-appearances are taintless, it must be known that that is the abiding genuine nature. Ultimately, just as the nature of pure gold is fully revealed, this pure wisdom, free from all defilements, is the true nature of reality. When discussing this ultimate reality, as ordinary beings on the path of practice, we have to speak of it in separate terms. We see all phenomena as the object, and the wisdom perceiving them as the subject. The object and the subject stay separate. Before reaching the levels of a bodhisattva or a Buddha, it always feels like the subject and its object are two different things. They seem to move in opposite directions, as if they could never merge. But when you truly realize the nature of all things, there is no separation between subject and object, nor between past and future. However, this realization is far too deep for most people to grasp. It's like the quote I shared yesterday from Jet Tsongkhapa, things that seem contradictory to the ignorant are not contradictory at all to the wise. There are so many examples of this, not just in deep philosophy. Even in modern space exploration, scientists have many theories about the Big Bang, such as whether the world or the universe even existed or not before it. They have all these conflicting hypotheses, but when you truly realize that all things are non-dual, all these conceptual elaborations vanish. This is the highest state of realization. This reality does exist. We must all practice together to reach such a state. That being so, if the phenomena of samsara are established as the perfectly pure nature of the deity, one may wonder what is meant by the perfectly pure deity. Previously, we established appearances as the deity. Here, deity is used in a broad sense. It doesn't just refer to the deity in the three roots of guru, deity, and dakini. In earlier translations, this term was often rendered as celestial being. But between celestial being and deity, deity is more commonly used and easier to understand. So in my current translation, I use deity. This is also found in many teachings by Rongzom Pandita. We often say the entire world is the mandala of the Buddha, a display of the Buddha's power. It carries the meaning of Buddha, but also the sense of a divine, perfectly pure state. The point is that all phenomena are originally one with the deity. Why is that? The text explains. The deity includes the genuine deity of the nature of phenomena and the relative deity of appearances. There are two types. Let's look at the first. The genuine deity of the nature of phenomena is the wisdom of indivisible appearances and emptiness, the Vajrakaya free from the obstruction of transition. As ordinary beings, we might imagine Vajrakaya and wisdom as being like our own physical bodies and ordinary minds. But in reality, they are not like that at all. The inseparable union of appearance and emptiness is called wisdom. This wisdom is free from all attachment and conceptual elaborations. The ground or support of this state is called the Vajrakaya. Vajrakaya here doesn't mean a physical body that is so tough no one can destroy it. It's not that. What is the true nature of all phenomena? It is the non-duality of appearance and emptiness, unchanging and constant. It is an unconditioned state, an inconceivable dharmadhatu. In the nature of phenomena, just as it is, even the subtle habits of obstruction are exhausted and enlightenment is one taste. This is what true one-taste equality looks like. And what is one taste? It is being completely free from attachment. Becoming a Buddha here doesn't refer to the historical Buddha Shakyamuni, who made vows as a practitioner on the path and then attained enlightenment. We have to understand that terms are used differently depending on the context. The terms Vajrakaya and enlightenment of one taste simply mean that all phenomena are originally, as stated in the Sutrayana, beyond the four extremes and 8 elaborations. In Vajrayana, we call it the union of luminosity and emptiness, an inconceivable state. That's the realization. This is inconceivable freedom from the extremes of one or many. This dharmadhatu is completely beyond the concepts of one or many. Although free from all fields of experience based on characteristics, this nature appears as every knowable thing. The self-emergent wisdom kaya is not independent from or other than all the shugatas of the 3 times, even though it has no physical form or characteristics. It can manifest as the essence of everything we perceive. Realizing this essence is to be in one taste with all Buddhas. They are not separate, they are one and the same. It is awakened as the evenness of samsara and enlightenment. This is the genuine deity, sovereign of all families. This means that in the Dharmadhatu, all Buddhas of the past, present, and future are one. It's not as if the wisdom in Buddha Shakyamuni's mind is different from the wisdom in Amitabha Buddha's mind. They aren't 2 separate people. Like how my mind stream is completely different from yours. Many people today think, oh, Shakyamuni Buddha was a great teacher who lived here in the world of Jambudvipa, and Amitabha Buddha is a professor at a university in the West. He just happens to have more retinues. When we introduce Buddhism to people, we often have to start there. There's no other way. But in reality, Amitabha and Shakyamuni are just different manifestations of the Nirmanakaya appearing for different beings. In truth, the wisdom of Amitabha, the wisdom of Shakyamuni, and the wisdom of all Buddhas of the 3 times are non-dual in the Dharmadhatu. They are completely one and of a single taste. If they weren't one and the same, then the mind-to-mind transmission of the Buddhas would be impossible. Furthermore, it would imply a hierarchy among the Buddha's realizations. Who could say whose realization is higher, Amitabha's or Shakyamuni's? Or that one Buddha might know something another doesn't? However, we can only truly understand these things once we have attained the stages of a bodhisattva. Only then can you see how the Buddhas manifest as sentient beings. The form of the Nirmanakaya and the infinite wisdom treasury of the Sambhogakaya, and how their very essence appears within the unarisen Dharmadhatu. For this reason, even as ordinary beings, we can practice many deity yogas in Vajrayana. When you know how to practice correctly, the Buddha's wisdom and your own mind can actually merge into one. The Buddha and all the gurus are inseparable. In that final state of rest, their wisdom and your mind are one. Even if we aren't fully merged right now, we can still practice in a way that is in alignment with that state. Why does Vajrayana have such pith instructions? They are indeed not found in the Sutrayana. When I say things like this, some Sutrayana teachers and practitioners might get a bit upset. But even if they're unhappy, that's just the fact. The Sutrayana doesn't have these specific methods. Now, we aren't criticizing the Sutrayana or saying it's invalid. And we are definitely not saying that the Sutrayana doesn't lead to Buddhahood. In the most profound Sutrayana scriptures, it is taught that all beings have Buddha nature. Some even state that sentient beings are Buddha. But how are they Buddha? How do you practice? How do you reach union with that? These specific pith instructions are found within Vajrayana. That's why the Tantras and commentaries of Vajrayana have their own unique strengths. There are some Sutrayana scholars and practitioners who don't realize how vast the teachings are. They'll say, I don't accept Vajrayana. I have no faith in it. Honestly, that's quite sad. Do they think the sky will fall just because they don't accept it? Rejecting the truth only shows one's own ignorance. It doesn't hurt Vajrayana in the slightest. It's like a poor person saying, I don't believe in gold, I don't need gold. When you talk like that, imagine what others think of you. So to those Sutrayana practitioners, if you really want to reject it, at least read the Tantras first. Can you even understand them? Try to learn. There are things that are impossible to explain in the Sutrayana, yet Vajrayana provides clear explanations. How does the Sutrayana account for those? Some people barely understand the Sutrayana themselves, yet they keep claiming Vajrayana is this or that is wrong. It's really quite pitiful. Usually in the world, those who slander other religions or the Dharma are those whose wisdom hasn't matured. They are just following others' opinions blindly. People who are truly wise and fair-minded will examine their own understanding as well as outside knowledge. They wouldn't just casually say, oh, Vajrayana. They act as if Vajrayana and Sutrayana were just two simple elementary school books, that if they don't accept it, the book ceases to exist. They think it's simple, but honestly it isn't. If you have the time to explore the Tantras one by one, you'll eventually see how their principles integrate with the Sutrayana. Then you will understand the truth. Throughout history, in India, Tibetan region, and Han region, at the very beginning, it's understandable that some people misunderstood Vajrayana because these are very profound teachings. Truth is often held by the few. But to slander the truth, you really need to have a very high realization or at least some deep wisdom. Otherwise, to those Dharma teachers or scholars who have issues with Vajrayana, we'd be more than happy to talk with you face to face. There's no need to talk behind our backs about what you do or don't accept. If you don't accept it, then let's discuss it through the proper channels in person. This is not a debate, and you do not need to pledge your life or your body as a guarantee. We should just talk openly. Why don't you accept it? What part don't you understand? It's okay not to understand. If certain behaviors or teachings in Vajrayana seem incomprehensible, well, you might find things you don't initially understand in the Sutrayana or any other religion too. There'll be things you don't get at first, but eventually you'll go, oh, I see. I see this among Buddhists today. In our audience today, there are quite a few people who initially had strong biases against Vajrayana, but over time their faith has grown immensely. If you've ever slandered or acted disrespectfully toward these teachings in the past, you really should sincerely repent. Otherwise, those words and actions will become real obstacles to your liberation and enlightenment. You see, Vajrayana isn't something that can be easily dismissed or slandered. It is not as easy as simply deciding you want to destroy it. Every single principle within these teachings was propagated by great masters with the utmost intellectual rigor. And for us to share these teachings, we've also spent years in deep research. So if you truly have doubts or issues with Vajrayana, the best way is to go to an authentic Dharma center and study it properly. Spend 8 or 10 years studying it deeply, and then see if you can find anything illogical in Vajrayana. That is the right way to approach it. If you were to truly refute the logic of Vajrayana, you would have to overturn the most definitive teachings of the Sutrayana as well. Even many principles in Chan Buddhism wouldn't hold up anymore. In the end, you would only be undermining your own path. We often see this among Buddhists. Non-Buddhists are actually slightly better, partly because they don't know the details, but also because they tend to be more open-minded and tolerant. Yet we see certain individuals, such as some elderly Pure Land practitioners, who lack any real wisdom or understanding of the Dharma. They just go on muttering all kinds of slanders. Honestly, it makes me want to find a few of these seniors in their 70s or 80s and have a proper debate with them. Just kidding. All right, that is all for today.
Bandara